All right, thank you, Cody. All right, good evening, everyone. This is a meeting of the Transportation Committee. Today is Monday, October 10th. First item of business today is consideration of the minutes from the September 22nd, 26th, sorry. So if there are no additions or corrections, we'll consider approval of those minutes.
I'll move approval of the minutes.
Second, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
That motion passes. All right. Next up, we have an update from Birmingham Department of Transportation.
Good afternoon. I'm Colin Alexander, serve as planner with the Department of Transportation. I've got a couple of things I'm just going to give you some high-level updates on. The first one is it's grant season. So we've got our two big grants that we're going after as part of the infrastructure bill right now are going to be submitted this week. RCE should be submitted later today, and Reconnecting Communities later this week as well. The next update I was going to give you is on the interstate lighting project. I know there have been some questions. We've done a little bit of research and have a better understanding. The university and Green Springs lights are on and working. As a matter of fact, I drove through them last weekend, so they are up and running as part of that project. On the west side, going from Arkadelphia towards, I think it's 20th Street, Ensley exit, those lights have been repaired, but one of the issues we're having is that there is a fuse there that gets triggered very easily, and that wasn't part of the scope of the work of this ALDOT project, so we go and we'll reset that fuse on a regular basis, but we're going to have to come up with a project to fix that. But the lights themselves have been replaced and are working. As for the section on between Tallapoosa and Vanderbilt Road, that one section on coming from the airport, we've followed up with ALDOT and with the contractor and have a better understanding. Originally, they were planning to tie them into the original fuse boxes, but one of the fuse boxes on the east side is completely unusable. And so in order to stay within the scope of the work and get those lights working, they're going to have to go across railroad right-of-way with CSX and Norfolk Southern. So we are stepping in to help coordinate that with Norfolk Southern, especially, and with CSX in order to make sure that we can get that project rolling. It's going to take a couple of weeks for us to navigate that, but we're going to get that section addressed.
Okay.
The third update I've got is in terms of micromobility. As you know, Bolt went out of business. Last week we sent out a cease and desist letter to the subcontractor that was managing the Bolt scooters here in the city, so they should be coming off the streets. They're no longer going to be a vendor here in the city. To replace them, we have received an application from Lime, so we're going through the legal process of reviewing that application and hoping that they will be a vendor coming in to replace Bolt in the market.
Okay.
And then the fourth update, which I know, Mr. Chairman, you had requested sort of a public update on this, is regarding school speed zones. So the city of Birmingham has never done school speed zones. Part of that is because the state law for a long time required it for areas in unincorporated counties, but left it optional for municipalities. And with how the Highway Administration's rules are, if you do it for one school, you're technically supposed to do it for every school in the district, and we've just never done that. In 2021, in May, the state legislation changed, and it now requires school speed zones for every public and private school in the state. So we've got a number of schools, obviously, in the area. We need to come up with a plan. The state legislation left a lot of unanswered questions. We're working with the law department, may have to come up with our own ordinance in order to fill in the gaps in terms of questions even like, is it good during the school day? Is it good only when children are present? Is it only good during pickup drop-off? Those kind of questions we need to delve in and answer and have that ready before we start implementing our speed zones. And we're going to start implementing them probably in phases, just as we have a lot of schools. We're going to start with schools that are currently on our traffic calming request lists first, because we know there's a need there. And then we'll start gradually working elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, et cetera, to get those implemented.
Okay. Yeah, I had to go out and drive around a couple of schools to convince myself that we actually didn't have any school zones.
No.
Yeah, in fact, we do not. There's no markings or...
I think we put in a couple of them, but overall we don't have a coherent system, no.
Okay, and we know that there's, 42 Birmingham City schools, but this also includes private schools.
That's correct. And the state legislation actually did not define what a school is. So there's still some questions. I mean, in general, we don't think it would apply to colleges and tech schools, but it's also not stated. So we're trying to, working with our Office of the City Attorney, clear that up and make sure that we are in compliance with what the state vision is for school speed zones.
And the state, in passing or changing this legislation, they did not include any assistance to municipalities to...
No, this is an unfunded mandate.
Okay. Any questions? I mean, I think it's a good idea, but it's difficult in that, all of that work is going to cost money. So it's not just, a matter of putting up some signs.
Well, that's why it's got to be a gradual implementation.
Right.
So.
And then we have to think about enforcement.
Exactly.
Too. Because, signs don't mean anything if there's nothing backing it up. Okay.
So those are the updates I've got. If there are any other questions from the council before I hand it over to my colleague in traffic calming to give you guys a traffic calming update.
Okay. Any other issues that you guys want to touch on with Colin? I did want to ask about my understanding that we are in negotiations with BJCTA regarding their annual contract with the city of Birmingham. Can the council expect to see that sometime soon?
That's not really in my line of sight in the department, so I'll have to go back and get a report for you on that.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
All right, thank you. Then I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Eliza Bingham.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Eliza. I am an engineer for the Department of Transportation, and I've taken over traffic calming from Colin. And so I was just going to give you an update on our numbers so that you can get like a broader idea of what we're doing and our progress on it. So we have all of our locations grouped in groups of, it's around 15 to 20 per group. And we have different phases that we proceed through. So we have our data collection, then we design, then we implement, and then we just have the queue of everything else that we haven't gotten to yet. So we're currently on group 4 of 14, and we have 78 open cases, and then we have 138 still in our queue. We have been able to close 22 completely, and then I'll break down the ones that we have open. So the ones in the speed data phase, we're collecting, there are 23 locations that we're like in the process of getting data on. And that kind of data is just speed and volume data. And then we also talk to the residents to get like their feedback on like what's going on there. And then for the design phase, we're designing on 25 different locations at the moment. And that can be anything from just like striping, adding in like always stops, and then the speed cushions, which those, of course, take the longest. And then we are in the implementation phase with 30 different locations. And so that is when we send a work order over to the shop, and a lot of those we're just waiting on them to finish. It is, a lot of them get held up when the petition for the speed cushions aren't returned. So we currently have 12 petitions that have not been returned by the residents. So we're waiting on those to proceed. 39th Street is being installed. Their speed cushions are being installed. Crest Hill in District 2 is next. And then 10th Court West in District 8, we're hoping to have done by December. And then we're waiting on funds for 7th Street Northwest. I think that's all I have. Did y'all have any specific questions?
So can you tell me more about the petition? So you guys are asking the residents in the area surrounding where the speed cushions are being installed to basically consent, or?
Yes. Yeah. So we're just getting the approval on the neighbors that are immediately surrounding where the speed cushions will be located. And they, of course, can say yes or no. We have to get at least 2/3 of the collective group to approve to be able to be installed. So that's our policy on that.
Okay. Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am interested in the progress or where we are as far as the District 1 ones that are open, and then you mentioned 7th Street Northwest. I imagine when you're talking about the funding on that one, that's just the internal process of it getting to the right account so you can spend it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think so, on the 7th. And then I can get you an update for District 1.
Okay.
I would have to go look at my spreadsheet.
So I was out driving the district this morning and noticed that 9th Street North is, there was recent paving done there, and it's being striped today. So it's getting a new configuration with protected bike lanes, which is going to put the vehicle parking, away from the curb. And this may not necessarily be your lane. I mean, is that considered a traffic calming project, or? I mean, it'll probably have that effect, but I'm not sure that's.
Yeah, I don't think that one was me specifically. We'll have larger road diets that we do. I would imagine that one was one of the road diets, but that is a traffic calming measure, is implementing that sort of striping. Okay.
Yeah, I can, on 9th Street North was not a traffic calming project. That was a Complete Streets project as part of our resurfacing package. So as part of the Complete Streets ordinance, we review segments where we think we need to add bike capacity or ped capacity or transit capacity based off the ordinance to what is possible. So that one was a Complete Streets project, but it definitely can be used as a traffic calming technique, and we are using that as part of our designs where appropriate.
Is there going to be any kind of physical barrier between the parked cars and the bike lane? And because, this is a new concept for Birmingham drivers to park away from the curb.
Right.
And there was a test project, a pop-up demonstration project done in Woodlawn a few years ago that, just to put it frankly, people didn't get it. So I think there's, definitely going to have to be some education around that. But, the thing that we don't want is for the bike lane to be impeded by people parking over against the curb.
Right. No, currently there's no plan for any physical buffers or barriers, but that's a really good point about, especially with the education piece. So we'll circle back with our team and see what we can do to make sure that that's an effective
Okay,
implementation.
all right, thank you. Question?
Yes. How you doing?
Hi,
Good.
Tina.
What updates do you have for District 9 for speed cushions?
I would have to go look at my list, but I can send you an email
Okay.
with those.
So, and can you give us the numbers again? You said there was 4 of 14 that have been closed.
Well, so we're on group 4, so those have been the ones that we have been opening. Like, so by opening it, it means just like we start collecting speed data.
Okay, so these are groups, so it's,
Right.
and the
We have
groups
groups.
are 15 to 20 projects?
Right.
Okay, and then you said there were 78 open cases? So that would, the 78 would be in that, the 10 out of the 14 that would be in that other group of 10 that aren't being worked on right now? And then you said one other number, that there were 114 or?
There are 138 in the unopened groups.
Okay, 138, and those are individual.
Those are, yeah, individual locations.
Okay.
We'll have like a resident call in and then we'll just add it to our queue.
Okay, so if we're working on 4 of 14 and of the groups, and each group has 15 to 20, we're actively working on about 60 different locations. Is that
We're actively working on 78.
78? Okay, gotcha. All right.
And like actively working, some of them have already been like designed and the like work orders have been sent to the shop, so it's like very close to being done, a lot of them. More of them are, so in that phase there are 30 in that phase that are like potentially almost closed.
Yeah. I think it would be helpful for the council to have, like a visual representation of this information, just for us to share with our constituents to say, this is where all of their requests are. Here's the ones that we're actively working on. Just so that we can communicate to our constituents that just in terms of the volume. Because I know in my own neighborhood, I went to my recent neighborhood meeting, and resident there has been, asking for assistance, and I have to tell her, look, we only created a traffic calming process. Has it been 2 years? I don't know if it's been 2 years, but after the city's been in existence since 1871, and we haven't had traffic calming during that entire period. Yeah, so back when they had horse and buggies and streetcars, they didn't need traffic calming so much. But anyway, all right, thank you. Appreciate the work that you're doing, and keep it up. Do you have any old or new business we need to discuss?
No, just getting I think a good report, whether it's at this a one-sheeter, just so we're not trying to add that up like you were doing in your head,
Right.
on the speed cushions, and just kind of continue to have a conversation around what we need as far as funding, because we I know we got 50,000 in the budget last year. We got 100,000 in the budget this year. But just, being aware of what may be needed funding-wise to move, this process and figure out whatever the goal is, like what a good goal is, whether it's a monthly goal, that we get 5 installed a month or 10, like whatever a good goal is, setting that and then figure out the cost to meet that. Because we do need to have some turnover, and we've had them in. I think the first one might have been installed about 2 years ago, and so they work really well. They're very, very effective. You go from tons of complaints to literally no complaints, and so they're very effective. And so just figuring out what we have to do to kind of stabilize it, and and be able to have something where we're only going to do 10 a month or 5 a month or whatever it is, and so we can more effectively set those expectations. But yeah.
Elisa, are you guys doing everything in-house? So, right, but yeah. So manpower on the actual installation is a limitation. But then prior to that, there's, you actually have to go out to the neighborhood meetings and talk to folks and distribute the petitions, collect the petitions, do speed studies, actually design, striping and different configurations, establish where the speed cushion needs to go precisely. So it's quite involved for each location before you actually get to an installation step. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Also, like maybe even reworking the order of that process and doing the petition first before you do the study. That way, make sure that the support for it is there before we actually do the study. And then on the installation, I'm not asking for installation detail, but wondering if better equipment, because I imagine there's pre-drilling, and so I feel like there's drills out there where you can drill that a whole lot easier without having to be losing sleep about having to do that. So, and those are the things where let us know those things, what's needed to do it, whatever you need to do more efficiently, so we can move faster. Because I think the whole thing you may be drilling like at least 16 or so holes you can see, and maybe some under there that you can't see, but. If you have more of a drill press where you're standing up and letting the machine do the work, so things like that.
Yeah. And maybe, this is up to your departmental director to decide, but that project, along with the school speed zones, that's going to demand a lot of resources, especially in terms of manpower. So maybe in their next budget request, include more funding for professional services to cover that type of, design work, especially. All right, that brings us to the end of our agenda. Motion to adjourn? All in favor say aye. Aye. Meeting adjourned.